Um, let's kick off with Mox. What kind of creative work are you producing right now? And what is it about Mox's culture or approach that feels exciting to be part of?
Great question. Yeah, I mean, in terms of clients, Mox work a lot with Nike. Like Nike's our main client. We work with the global teams, we work with EMEA, we work with their Greater China, APLA teams. They keep us very busy. But just kind of a bit further than that, we work in this kind of like sports lifestyle space, you know. So yeah, we're working on a few things right now, for the swoosh, for a few other brands. And what can I say? What's coming out right now? Oh yeah, well we just did a bunch of stuff for the women's football teams in the US, which is super exciting. For me, obviously I'm from the UK, soccer, football, whatever is huge over there. In the US, not as much of a big thing, but the women's teams are like they're the heroes over here, which is so exciting to see. Obviously the Lionesses are following a little bit, but over here, like the girls here are like actual gods. So it was awesome. We shot all the new sled kits for the US women's national team, for the Brazilian team, for the South Korean team. And that was great. It's awesome being able to do work where we are really uplifting kind of, cultures, subcultures, groups, teams, people that maybe don't usually get that level of celebration elsewhere. So that was a really cool one. Um, what else are we working on right now? We
I
just did a
saw
really
that you
fun
call yourselves like the Kappa. I always forget get the pronunciation
capybara,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, the capybara. I remember seeing them in the wild and being in a boat, and then they saw us, and it was quite funny. There was like a family of them, and they all sort of stopped. Obviously, they were there, and you could see them, but at the same time, they sort of stopped in a pose to pretend like like being statues, as though you're not going to notice them, kind of thing. It was really amazing.
That's
They're
so
quite amazing
funny.
creatures. But I saw in your on the website there's a lot of talk about you, the capybara. How'd you say it? The
Capybara, yeah.
capybara of the agency world.
Yeah, so it's funny. It's something we ask the founders all the time. We're like, where did this come from? Like, how did Mox become the capybara of creative agencies? And there's a few different stories and explanations depending on who you ask. But I think the general gist is, as far as animal species go, capybaras are quite calm. They're very in like they integrate with other species really well. They're not like exclusive. They don't kind of like corner themselves or like exclude themselves from like these group activities per se. So they can get on with anyone and they kind of get on with anything. And I think that's what we were taking from that. We wanted to be the agency that doesn't, put ourselves in a box, doesn't take ourselves too seriously. We get on with everyone. I think the other thing that we kind of say a lot at Mox is all species welcome, which I think is quite cute because yeah, we're a really solid group of people. Like we all have very like-minded interests and ways of working and goals and interests and all that. But at the same time, we're all very, very different. We have people from all over the world, living all over the world, people that have moved to the UK from the UK, different backgrounds. And really, as long as you have like the work ethic and the like passion and interest that Mox kind of represents, that's really all you need to work a Mox, and then we'll figure out the rest.
Both London and New York, from a production standpoint, what are the biggest cultural or practical differences you've noticed between the two? And has one influenced how you work in the other?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, well, when I moved from London to New York, I had never worked there before. Like I'd been on a few jobs where we had service companies, but obviously we all know that's not the same thing. So it was definitely a culture shock and like a work shock because the production like process in the US in general is so much more so much more complicated than in the UK, which has its benefits and its detriments. Like I think it was difficult coming in because you have to learn, even just silly things like workers' compensation and payroll and all these very kind of administrative tasks that are really, really important. And as you kind of are more immersed in the culture here, you understand why. Like everyone has to be insured, everyone has to be covered, like no one can just get paid. The UK way of just invoicing and that's that would never fly here. So there's a lot of kind of admin things like that that were took a while to get my head around. But aside from that, I would say it's actually a lot easier to produce in the US. Um, Particularly in LA. I would say LA is the easiest place in the world to shoot as long as you have budget. That's always what I say. Because the this city particular, but like the US in general, is kind of built around this kind of modern like business. I guess like the industry is so important to this country and particularly to this city. I'm in LA right now. And yeah, if you have the money or you have kind of enough time to figure it out, anything is possible here. Whereas I feel like in London, it's if they don't want you to shoot somewhere, you're not going to shoot there, kind of thing. So I think in a way, shooting in the US has definitely spoiled me a little bit. When I go back to the UK and we want to shoot someone, they're like, "Oh, we can't," and I'm like, "Let's just give them some more money," and they're like, "No." It's influenced me, I guess, in a bad way. I feel like maybe it's because of the film and entertainment industry isn't quite as integrated into our country or like our city as it is in LA and New York. So I feel like it's a job and people are very passionate about their jobs, but in a way it's kind of there's definitely this separation between like job and life. And I'm not sure how what the connection is, but in a way I think it makes for more interesting work. Like I said, I feel like the UK, you can tell when something's made by UK creators, by UK teams in the UK. We have this really, I don't want to say gritty, I don't want to say edgy because it's like, whatever the buzzwords, but it is. It's like we have, I don't know, it's very like reflective of our culture and who we are as a country, and it's cool. It's like just easily cool. Whereas I think in the US, sometimes things can get a bit commercial a bit quickly. So, to answer your question, I would say shooting in the UK has kind of influenced me a little bit more to push those boundaries here in the US and try and make things a little bit more just make things that are a bit closer to like the culture or the subculture that we're trying to tap into rather than what's necessarily going to like excite the client or the vendor. Because there's definitely a bit of a separation between those two sometimes.
Yeah, and also the fact the fascinating thing with the big difference I think which creates that environment specifically is, or one of the main contributors is the fact that when I shoot with the director and we go all the way to edit and then we pass it over. And
Hmm.
I've always been fascinated with the idea of not just shooting rushes and passing it over to people
So crazy.
who've got so many different agendas going on in that environment. I mean, it fascinates me. I was always amazed when I'd have friends who were going over to editors, especially obviously in edit houses, going over this. Just a joy. It's not a joy to work on, but 3 months, 30 minutes, 30-second
Hmm.
spot. No one even knows what it was. No one even knows what the original game was at the beginning, because it's gone
Totally.
so insane at the end. And that's why there's this homogenized effect on because it's so compromised because of that. That's why the British stuff, I think, and the UK stuff has always got the edge over, I don't know, most places really in Anglo world. Anyway, I'll shut up.
Completely
And
agree.
the next thing is three. So, as head of production, you've seen all sides of the job. What's one habit or mindset shift you think every young producer or every junior producer should be building early on if they wanna get through? So, what do they need? In my view, it's always a producer has got to just fucking fix stuff and make it happen no matter what. I mean, Sam put us in touch, right? And he's the producer. If I was shooting, we met when I was EP at Caviar because I used to work production side and now I work
Oh,
service
nice.
side. And he's the guy I want because he'll make it happen. He's the guy who will get me
Absolutely.
through the door to the club I want to go to at night, but also he'll get the set organized and I don't need to know what's happening, but something will get fixed. It will happen somehow. He's the fixer of all.
Mm,
And I think that is the most important thing. I don't need to know how it's done necessarily. I mean, it's got to be done perfectly. We've got to get the paperwork boringly, which is hugely key. But at the same time, you just got to have that mindset, I think. Anyway, I was going to, questions to you. That's my stupidness. What do you think?
no, I agree. I think having it's the fixer mentality is basically just having that extra level of care. It's wanting to go above and beyond and get everything done. Because I think one thing that's really easy for a producer to say is, no, sorry, it's not possible. Sorry, we're out of time. Sorry, the budget doesn't work, etc. But I think the difference between a good producer and a really good producer is going that extra mile and really just, putting everything on the line for not put everyone on, that's so dramatic, but really, really like giving it your all and really just, being confident that you have tried everything to make it happen. And I think as one thing I've learned as a head of production, kind of like the difference between producing and being in the job and being kind of across lots of different jobs is the same kind of thing. It's like, sometimes someone's so in something that they're like, it's not possible, we can't do it. And I think that's one thing that I try and teach or like, just like coach people through. It's like, we can do it. Let's just take a step back. Do we need more support? Do we need, what is going to help us get there? But I think it really is the main thing is getting stuff done. And I think, being part of a creative agency as well, that has taught me a lot because from full service production to creative agency, the production nuances kind of change a lot. And now not only are we building these jobs and running these big productions, we're also protecting the creative integrity and really making sure that we're like supporting the creative team as much as possible. Because at the end of the day, the creative, it's our project that we want to be the best it can be. And so, yeah, so I think it really is just giving 110%, going that extra mile, and yeah, just, being confident that you've given it your all. And I think, like you mentioned earlier about different people doing different things. It's just like the more people the more people that you've met, the more places you've been, the more times you've reached out to people, they'll always come back around and you're like, ah, yes, that one person. So it's like every single person you meet on set, every single person you meet, in prep, whatever, everyone's important. Everyone, it's important to like maintain those relationships because you never know when they'll be able to help you and when you'll be able to help them in the future. So yeah, I think it's just having that human approach as well.
Good. Number five, you've got a background that spans fashion, photography, and film. How has that range influenced how you solve problems creatively on set today? Do you think that kind of crossover experience gives you an edge? I mean, it's pretty freaking obvious, but yeah.
You know what? I think it's really important. I don't know about an edge, but I think it's really important to have experience or understanding of both sides, fashion, photography, stills, film,
Yeah.
motion, commercials, because they are completely different worlds. And I'm not pretending that I have mastered both either anything, but having having experience in both really shows you like how different the approach is, and it helps you to kind of understand where someone else's mindset's at. You know, I started off in stills, photography, fashion world, which is its own beast. I'm sure a motion producer will look at it and be like, easy peasy. But it's the things that might not seem important on the motion side are really important on the still side. And then vice versa, the things that are really important on the motion side potentially get a bit overlooked on stills or don't exist in stills. So having the crossover, I think, is so important because there's always clashes when there's, hybrid sets, two teams. So being able to work with that other partner and work well, play nicely, and get along, it just, it changes the entire like attitude. And that, having a good vibe on set is really all we can ask for.
Mm.
And I think that going in with that mindset versus like the us versus them approach will always glean better results on both sides. And it's something that we've spoken about before at Marks. We're very, we do a lot of our own production house. Obviously, when we work with directors and we're doing bigger TVCs, we partner with production companies. So there is a lot of these like hybrid and crossover type shoots. And we are really, really strict on ourselves. We always, we have the same kind of pep talks, reminding our teams, briefing in freelancers. We always want to partner and collaborate as much as possible. It's never like we're doing this, you're doing that. It's always what can we do that's going to make everyone happy? And obviously, we
Mm.
can't always make everyone happy, but I think it's about you shoot for the stars, and we fall somewhere in between where we can have all the nice candles and flowers, and we can also have the extra cranes and whatever else that the motion side want.
Perfect. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? With I always felt when you mentioned the fashion stuff, that's a whole, like you said, a different beast. I just remember you got
Hmm.
to. I think the main thing is you've got to be mindful and respectful of everyone. I think now when I find I go on shoots, there's a lot of you've got a photographer on there as well to give them the time, but you also need the right photographer. I find when I'm doing a shoot to
Definitely.
work around everyone else, and there's always that director who gets pissy about the photographer and vice versa, and you've got to manage
It's
that. But
so
you've also got to.
tricky.
The fashion world is such a law unto itself. I mean, it's just it's bizarre, and it's having a tough time at the moment. So I can't even imagine the joys of that. At
The
least
choice of
before
that.
it had some. There was a reason for it, but as now,
They
I
could put
mean,
their money where their mouth was.
yeah, exactly. And there was the nonsense for the reason. But yeah, I was with a friend
Hmm.
of mine. He's a designer at McQueen, and he was talking about how tough it is at the moment. Anyway,
Yeah, it's
next
definitely not.
onwards. Six. So let's talk talent. What kind of directors or creative partners are you looking to work with at Mox? And for anyone listening who wants to collaborate, what makes someone stand out to you?
So I think the main thing that we kind of discuss and like work towards at Marks with regards to partners is that we always want to be working with fresh, new, and exciting talent. Like obviously we have really great relationships with a lot of existing photographers, directors, stylists, etc. But the beauty of us being an independent agency and not rostering talent means that we really can and will push the exact like perfect partner for each project. Um, so yeah, I mean, when we're doing new jobs and we're kind of doing a deep dive into our partner options, we go everywhere. We look at agencies, we look at like production companies. We'll have a look online on Instagram. We don't necessarily have like a specific. They have to be repped, they have to be unrepped. It's like we really will go everywhere and look everywhere. And if you have the right style for that job, then we will give you the time of day. Like we do a lot of chemistry calls, a lot of meetings. We like to chat and just kind of like meet people, like understand their workflow and what their level of comfort is and what their experience is, and then we kind of go from there. So I think at the moment we're really trying to champion young and emerging talent as much as possible. Like we see ourselves as kind of, we're not necessarily like a young agency, but we see ourselves as an agency that doesn't conform to the usual standards of like big like giant agency whatever. We always want to be working with fresh people, so it's like if you haven't been signed, you haven't been repped, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like we encourage everyone of all levels, and sometimes you're not right for the job, sometimes you don't have enough experience, it's fine, but there are other jobs where you'll be perfect, or maybe there's like an opportunity for a second shooter or a second unit or something, and we really do try and bring people in like that so that we know for the next time that you're right for this and you can kind of level up. And yeah, I'd say that's kind of where we're at, and that's the kind of people that we're looking for. And then when it comes to the larger shoots and working with rep talent and production companies, again, it really just comes down to the creative. We don't really have any like partners that we just go straight to and just ask them to kind of work it out for us. We like to do the research ourselves and not be biased by previous relationships or friendships or whatever. Like we really do just take it a case by case basis, and he's right for the job.
So you've built and led a lot of freelance teams. What are the qualities that make you want to rebook someone time and time again? And the flip side, any immediate red flags? I quite like that one because
Okay.
our game is all
Yeah.
about, I mean, I like having my team around me. Some people don't. And I found that, personally, from my experiences, it's always been like there's a vibe because everyone knows what everyone's doing. So they don't need to
Hmm.
ask all those questions again. But then I spoke to someone just the other day about it, and they're like, oh, no, 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 I like to mix it up all the time. And I'm like, well, I get that because I get like you want a
Interesting.
different wardrobe. But then there's been times when I've had a crew of like the best wardrobe person in the world, literally, like best everyone. And guess what? You get the best work, and you keep
Yeah.
working together and there's a good vibe. They're like, of course I'm going to book that person on the job. And you want them to come and that's their book kind of vibe.
I think in terms of production, so when I'm building out production teams, like freelance teams, I would definitely say that I like to stick with people I've worked with before, just because, like you said, it's so much easier to kind of trust people and leave them to do their thing. You don't have to micromanage, you don't have to kind of be that involved. So it depends, if we've got a lot of jobs on, we're really busy, I would always go back to trusted producers and production managers and, teams that I know mocks and know how we work. Having said that, I meet probably one to two producers a week just to kind of, you know, get get some, we want to have a good, like strong roster of people. I'm not saying that we always use the same people, but um yeah, I do a lot of meetings. I like to kind of get a feel for people. For me, the most important thing, like everyone has a CV, right? So as long as you've done, you paid your dues, you've done the years, you've got experience with X photographer, X director, X client, fine. But for me, it's really about those like interpersonal relationships. Like I need to be able to have a rapport with the producer because Mox's production department is really small, like really young. We started 2 years ago. We're still pretty small. So every job we do is building our reputation and our identity. So any freelancer we bring on is a reflection of that. So for me, they have to be friendly, they have to be, happy and willing to kind of go the extra mile, like we were saying earlier. Like I don't want to be working with freelancers that they're not invested enough to give it their all, basically. So yeah, so for freelancers, to answer your question, I do have trusted teams that I go back to time and time again, just because it's so much easier that way, but always open to meeting new people. And when you meet someone, you're like, love your energy, love your vibe, we're going to get you on the job. And then we just figure it out timing wise. But for crews, I would say, I mean, honestly, going back to the last question, we do always switch up our creative partners. And part of choosing a creative partner for me is trusting them to find their own team. So it's like we always have people that we can suggest, but I want to set every single person on that job up for success. So I would never make like a stylist work with our styling team, for example, or like a photographer work with our first assistants. Like if they have teams that they know and trust, we would always go with them just so that they feel, set up for success on the day. But yeah, but again, we do a lot of meetings. We meet a lot of different production teams, like stylists, photo assistants, put it all in our black book, and they're all in there. And the black book gets used very, very often. So it's always good to reach out. We are a friendly agency. We always want to say hi. Um, so yeah.
But anyway, we've all been in that client meeting where the brief shifts mid-shoot, right? So how do you protect the creative vision without blowing the schedule or the relationship? I mean,
Oh,
I'm
that is a
getting
good
this
question.
brief is testing, changing every day. There's a guy who was talking to me before, a much
Yeah,
older producer, and he's like, he's at the end of the game, his end of his time in a way. And he was just saying how, pre-internet he was talking about. It was quite interesting because he was talking about like, and he's still shooting amazing jobs. He's still working with Biscuit and Jeff Lowe and all these people. He's literally doing that at the moment. But he was talking about before there was not there wasn't the ability to get everyone on a Zoom call straight away and things like that, which we
hmm,
take for granted in a way. So it gave more
so
time
true.
for the creative to work. He was also talking about like the directors. He worked with Michel Gondry and people like that, and he was talking about like what creatives was signing off on like some, very obscure French dudes like art projects practically. And then he got like a Levi's campaign, the biggest one ever, like, and how different it is
Yeah,
now. It really made me think a lot about, like now, for example, it's the opposite of that. It just changes so often. So I've been talking
it
too much, so
does.
I'll shut up. How do you deal with it?
I mean, like you said, it happens all the time. So we kind of just have to roll with the punches. But I think for us, when our clients come to us with a brief change, um, we obviously take it on board and take it into account. But I think we've kind of built up this relationship with our clients. They trust us
Yes.
to really do what like the best job that we can. And so I think what they tend to do is they'll tell us like FYI, brand has just changed this or this talent has changed or this. And then they leave it to us to kind of refigure out the brief rather than telling us what needs to change. And I think that is really helpful because it kind of gives us the space, like the creative space to kind of just like flex into that new space without having to change too much. Um, Having said that, there have been some really last minute, hurdles and crazy things that have been asked of us. And I think honestly, we always just figure it out. It's like I don't think we've ever said absolutely not, we can't do that. There's always a solution, and I think a lot of clients ask the world, and I think when you remind them that they're asking the world, they kind of soften a little bit, and there's always a middle ground. So I think it's just about negotiation and open communication. I think that's the other thing with this, like because we have these really good relationships with our clients and they trust us, we are really honest with them. So if they ask us something and we don't think it's possible, we'll kind of say that, but we'll always have a solution or a backup. It's never a no, it's a maybe not this, but how about this? And quite often they love the solutions and the, different options that we're suggesting, which is nice.
I think. Is there a recent mocked job that really tested you creatively, logistically, or both, but in the end turned into something you're really proud of? Walk us through how you made it work.
So there's two jobs that come to mind. The first one being the Swatch Scuba Aqua, like jellyfish campaign that we just did. Um, it was Swatch was a new client for us. That's the first project we've done with them. Um, so as you can imagine, lots of teething problems, lots of, figuring out relationships and figuring out their way of working, then figuring out our way of working. So it was definitely a tricky process to get to the end result. Again, I think going back to what we said earlier about clients trusting us and having that faith to just let us run, this wasn't one of those projects. When you're working with a new client, obviously they're very protective of their brand, their identity, their idea, their budget. So it was very difficult to kind of get to a place where we could push the creative and then trust us to, achieve the final goal. However, having said that, although it was a very tricky few weeks leading up to the shoot, the shoot was absolutely fantastic. They had so much fun on set, in Prague in a massive um, pool, like swimming, like a water tank. They had a great time, and we're really, really pleased with the results. It's our first underwater shoot, so we had a lot of learnings and kind of different surprises there. But yeah, it was. We're really pleased with the result. We're really proud of where we got to with that, and yeah, we're now a really great partnership with Swatch, and fingers crossed, moving into our next one with them.
If you were just entering production now in 2025, with everything changing, your AI, shrinking budgets, remote workflows, what would you do differently? Or put another way, what do you wish someone had told you when you were starting out?
Hmm, Good question. I think what I would have loved someone to tell me when I was starting out was there is no rush. The more experience you have at every level will always help you later on. I know a lot of people, or, I meet a lot of producers that kind of don't come from that traditional working your way up route. Not saying that it's not possible, but I think sometimes when you miss out on those kind of character building, stressful experiences as a runner, as a PA, as a PM, trying to handle a budget, whatever, when you miss out on those, you miss out on these really valuable like lessons and problem solving kind of, I don't know, the problem solving mentality that helps you as a producer and as an EP kind of deal with even bigger problems. So I think just someone reminding me because I was always like, I want to be a PA, I want to be a PM, I want to, I always wanted the next step. And obviously, it's great to be ambitious, it's great to want to move forward, but I think having that experience is so valuable. So I think I'd want someone to remind me of that. And then just kind of shifting that into today's landscape, I guess. With shrinking budgets, with AI, with all these kind of developments in technology, I say, if you're getting into production, it's probably, I mean, I would say more than anything, it's good to get experience on the creative side as well. Because I think a lot of the times when you are a runner or a PA, you're very much integrated in this like logistical world, which is great and it is really important. But to be able to creatively problem solve and to, support directors and photographers and creative teams, it's good to have a better knowledge of the actual work they're doing. So, sometimes work experience and like those junior jobs that are adjacent to production are just as important and just integral to your work experience as production jobs are. So I would say just, play around, have fun, like work with different teams and figure out the best route for you because there's so many routes into production. Um, yeah, find the right one for you.